Hi, I'm Stephen Pfannkuche. We're standing here in the kitchen at my house in Athens, Georgia. Today we're going to be clarifying some grapefruit juice. The purpose of clarifying juice is basically to turn any sort of cloudy substance into a clear substance. This can have lots of different uses. If you're making cocktails, you might not necessarily want to put, a bright orange substance in a drink that's otherwise clear for it to alter the color. They're also a lot easier to carbonate, if that's something that you're into. I like carbonation a lot personally. I drink a lot of sparkling juices and waters. They also taste a lot different. To me, it removes a lot of the bitter flavors and leaves more of the sweet flavors behind. So let's get started. There's several different methods to clarify any sort of juice. The method we're going to be using today uses agar-agar, which is a seaweed-based hydrocolloid, and basically those are used as gelatinizers, thickeners, stuff like that. So it's a lot like gelatin, similar to what makes marshmallows set and thickens those. So we're going to get started with our agar, and we're going to put 1 tablespoon of agar into a pot, and we're also going to add to that 1 cup of hot water. Got to grab a whisk. Before you use agar, you have to activate it. Agar is heat activated. It's similar to if you've ever used gelatin before. You put it in water and let it bloom. It's kind of similar to that. You want to make sure when you put it in your water that you dissolve as much of it as you possibly can, because once it heats up, that's going to enable its thickening powers, and it's going to be hard to break up after that. So I'm just going to sit here, and it'll never be perfect, especially when you're adding hot water to it. Just break it up as much as you can. And we're going to turn the heat on. High heat, bring that to a boil. Still just kind of working on breaking up all these chunks that are in here while it's coming to a boil. With a cup of water, this shouldn't take very long at all, especially on a gas stove. And I always like to stir it constantly just to make sure that things stay evenly mixed. Once it comes to a boil, I'm going to turn the heat down to a simmer, cover it, and let it cook for about 5 minutes. Alright, so it's been 5 minutes now. The agar is well hydrated. What we're going to do now is take 1 quart of grapefruit juice. It's 4 cups. And just add it in slowly to this mixture and whisk the whole time to combine. What we're doing is equalizing the temperature, and as it cools, this agar is really going to set and turn into a gel. And it's really important to add the cold grapefruit juice to the hot water and not the other way around. I did that the first time I tried this and ended up with just a really weak, clumpy gel, and that was the culprit, was trying to add the hot stuff to the cold stuff. The temperature just equalized way too quickly. Didn't have time to really mix together very well. So you want to whisk right up here until the bitter end, and then take your solution. Just pour it into something wide. I use my, just a big, wide saute pan that I have. You can use hotel pans, anything like that. We're going to let this set and turn into a gel. It actually doesn't take too terribly long. Alright, so we can see now this guy's been set into a pretty nice gel. It's not sticking to the pan or anything. Let's move it around nicely. It's a really good sign. So what we're going to do now is take our whisk, sort of agitate it a little bit, and it's going to kind of bring it back to a semi-liquid state. There's still going to be a lot of for lack of a better word, plumpiness. Just kind of agitate the whole thing. Break it up. And start to kind of turn back into a liquid here. That's what we're going to do when it looks like this. It's pretty well agitated, so we're going to take it over here to our straining setup. What I have here, just a standard pot, very fine mesh strainer. Doesn't have to be pink, but it looks cooler if it is. And this is actually just a placemat. You can use any sort of like tea towel or fine cloth. If you have cheesecloth, you can use a few layers of cheesecloth. Any sort of fine cloth strainer. And we're going to pour this sort of agitated solution a little bit of a time into our tablecloth. We can lift it up and you can see your clarified juice starting to run out the bottom. You can actually do, at the beginning it's going to run out really freely like this. Once it starts to, a lot of the juice starts to disappear, you do kind of have to gently squeeze the top of your towel here just to keep an even stream coming out. If you squeeze too hard, some of the agar is going to push through and you're just going to get a much cloudier product than we're aiming for here. But it's not the end of the world. We're going to correct for that later anyways. And so once you get to a point where you're not really getting a lot of yield and you don't want to squeeze it too hard, it's time to move on to another batch. And what you do is just take another vessel. Look at that. That is all just solids from your grapefruit juice that we're straining out right now. So we're going to take that again and just repeat the exact same process with more of this agitated gel. Now we have our clarified grapefruit juice. How nice and pretty that is. You end up with about a pint, more or less, every time. So your yield, you get half of what you put into it almost every time. If you want a little bit more, you can take your solids that you have over here, agitate them again, repeat the same process. It's always just, I guess you can probably do it indefinitely, but your yield just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's up to you, whatever you think is worth it. Now, at this point, you have a very clear liquid. If you hold it up to the light, I don't know if your camera can see it, but when you squeeze the towel there's just a little bit of agar still kind of floating around in there, which is fine. It still tastes great. You can go one step further. What I normally do is take my pour over and run it through a coffee filter just to strain it one more time. I will warn you, this takes a long time usually. The reason why you don't want to run it through a coffee filter right at the beginning is because you'll run into the same problem you do here, where the agar just starts to clog it up really quickly, only it's amplified because you have so much more agar in your solution. But this will take out all of it. The caveat is that it just takes a while to strain. Today we're going to be peeling and supreming citrus fruits using enzymes. So for those of you unfamiliar with what it means to supreme a citrus fruit, basically refers to removing all of the really bitter white pith and just isolating the fruit segments themselves. And traditionally what you have to do is this really laborious process where you take the skin off very carefully without removing any of the fruit. And then you take each segment and cut it out individually away from the membrane that separates each segment. And the result is just never super satisfactory. I mean, you come out with little tiny dinkin looking things like this, but there's a way around it, and that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to start off, this is an enzyme called Pectinex Ultra SPL5. You can get it at modernistpantry.com. Basically what this is an enzyme that breaks down pectin in fruits and vegetables. And pectin is the main substance that makes up the cell wall of plants, and so we're just kind of going to break that down, and it'll help to remove that really bitter pith that we don't want the flavor to. What we're going to do is put a few little dashes into the bottom of a mixing bowl, and we're talking 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon here, and add maybe a cup to 1.5 cups worth of just cold to room temperature water. Let that sit for a little bit, and then we're going to start to peel our oranges. I like to do it with my hands, just like I'm a kid eating clementines again. Whatever you do, do not throw away the peel, because we will be dealing with those as well. So now that we have everything peeled, what we're going to do is take the rinds and put them into one Ziploc bag. I know it's giant, but it'll make it easier to vacuum seal later. Set that aside, and then segment these guys very carefully into their little individual segments. And if you do happen to have a chamber, like a professional chamber vacuum sealer, this step is totally unnecessary. This is just because we don't have a whole lot of pressure available to us to shoot this enzyme into it. And once we have all of our segments separated, we'll put that into another ridiculously large Ziploc bag. It doesn't have to be this big. This is just what I had available to me. So we're going to take our solution that we made earlier and add a little bit of it to each of the bags. And it really doesn't take a whole lot. Just enough to kind of cover them. And so this Pectinex stuff here is very temperature sensitive. There are several ways to go about it from this point. You can put these bags in your fridge and they'll be ready in about 2 days. What I did last time was just sort of left them out on my counter at room temperature. They're ready in about 24 hours. But what we're going to do today is we're actually going to cook them at a very low temperature, 110 degrees Fahrenheit to be exact, in these bags, and they'll be ready to go in about 30 minutes actually. So this is our circulator here. It is set to 110 degrees. And we're actually going to sort of pseudo vacuum seal these guys, and how you're going to do that is drop your bag in, sort of seal it up most of the way, and leave a little air bubble at the end here. And the water, as you push the rest of the bag under, forces all of the air out through this air bubble, and just close it up at the last second, drop her in. We're going to do the same thing with our rinds. So, I've just taken these guys out of our 110-degree water bath. They've been in there for 30 minutes. And as you can see, I already have a lot of pectin breakdown on these segments here. That pulp is starting to just fall right off. You can assist that. Just run it under cold water for a little bit. It'll come right off. As you can see over here, you get these perfect blood orange sprems. No matter how good you are with your knife, you can't really do that. Another advantage of doing the citrus sprems this way is that you can actually take a toothbrush, and I actually brush my teeth with this. I saved this just for this purpose, but brush all of this nasty stuff off of the inside of the rind as well. Takes a little second to scrub, it doesn't break down quite as well. You help to get a little bit more of those really thick, bitter flavors. The blood orange rind doesn't work as well as other citrus because it has a really thick pulp on it. But just makes for a better garnish if you're garnishing a cocktail or something with this. It's just not as bitter. You can actually eat it. Just eat the rind, and it's pretty good actually.